to see if we get Fred on, okay? All right. If I were Mayor Scott, I might say something like, the hour of 6 o'clock having arrived, we'll go ahead and call this meeting of the Carlisle Borough Truth and Reconciliation meeting to order. Fred, are you good to go? Fred, are you good to begin?
While we're waiting on Fred, I don't think we ever agreed to a time limit for this meeting. And I think that maybe moving forward, we should do that in case people are trying to schedule things later in the evening moving forward. So what do we think? Should we call it quits at 7:30? Is 90 minutes enough time?
I think that's fair. I just realized I didn't have my speaker on. So I apologize. Yeah, but I couldn't hear you. So I couldn't hear anything that was being said. I apologize.
No worries. I was just saying, I think we talked about establishing a time limit, but I don't think we ever actually agreed on one. So should we agree on 7:30 and keep that moving forward, just in case folks have things they want to schedule after our meeting, so that you kind of know you can expect the meeting to end at 7:30 unless there's something really pressing?
Yeah, I would think maybe that's even the long end. I think we can probably handle the things that we need to handle most times in an hour.
That's cool with me too.
So let's try that out tonight. Let's see how we go. Fred,
Okay, sorry, I was having trouble connecting.
Hey, so was I, because I didn't even have my speaker on, so that's okay. Thanks again, Fred, for all you do.
Oh, certainly.
I guess we did already call the meeting to order.
I heard that. I could hear
I don't
you,
know.
I just couldn't. Okay, we're good.
Yeah, and I'm already seeing on here, we don't really have it on the agenda, but I think it's a good move for us to just take a brief moment of attendance and kind of check in with everyone. So we'll start with Kendall, DJ Isaac, better known as. Let us know you're here and tell us how you're doing tonight.
I'm present, doing pretty good.
Great, thank you. And Miss Doreen, how are you?
I am doing well, thank you.
Thank you. Raph, we'll kick it over to you.
Here, and I'm also doing well.
Good to see you. Graz.
I'm present and yeah, doing okay. Thanks.
Good to see you. Tristan.
I'm here and also doing well, a little on the crazy end, but good.
Great. Emily.
Here and happy to be so. Thanks for asking.
Fantastic. I'm Tawanda Stallworth, and I'm also here and ready to go. That's how I am. So we'll go ahead and jump into our business here tonight. You all received the minutes that were sent out. I will entertain a motion to approve those minutes with any corrections if there be any.
So moved.
Moved, Kendall moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Andrew Razanauskas seconded. Call for the question. Any unreadiness? All those in favor of approving the minutes, say aye.
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 All
Aye.
opposed? Ayes have it. Thank you very much. And I'll also say to Mr. Baldwin, again, thank you for your service. We certainly appreciate you doing this for us, and we are really grateful. So we'll kick it to Raph. I'm sorry I didn't get a chance to talk to you about this prior. Would you be willing to speak to the League of Women Voters meeting that you and Emily and I attended?
Yes, I can do that. So we attended, the three of us, the League of Women Voters meeting, not last Thursday, but the prior Thursday, if I'm not mistaken. Basically the group, wow, I should back up. The group wanted to meet with us essentially to learn about the work that we're doing. And we kind of shared things that we were up to and plans and our intentions. And one of the things that was voiced kind of most prominently is that we kind of wanted to be a sounding board to listen to the concerns that the league had. One of the things that happened before that is that there was a presentation about kind of racially disparate effects in the borough, both in terms of kind of income and wealth. So the borough kind of got that presentation, a presentation that was previously given at the town hall, that one of the town halls that kind of eventually led to the creation of our commission. And so after that, that kind of led to a kind of fruitful conversation about what we're doing, what we're thinking about, and as I said, our intention to kind of be a sounding board for this group and other sorts of groups to talk about what they would like to see. So the fair summary, Emily and Tawanda, of what we were up to.
I would only add that there was a question and answer period, and one of the most encouraging questions was, how can we help? So as we're moving forward and we need to enlist volunteers to help us with things, I think that group is ready and willing to help.
I totally agree. Thank you. Thank you, Raph, for that. Moving along to the Carlisle Area School District Board meeting. I attended in my capacity as co-chair, and I appreciate your support in doing that. As we know, Commissioner Wilbur is also an area educator, so it was good to be able to support her, and there were other educators in the room. I realized through that experience that part of the work of this commission is to we'll be looking at things many times through a historical lens, or we'll be looking at things that have already happened or experiences that people already had. But there is an element to this work that looks forward and is doing the work currently. So we're looking at injustice, inequity, racism that has already happened. But then what policies are underway, what things are happening in real time, so that when we look historically, that we're not looking historically at 2021. So that was, a good experience to be able to get our feet wet a little bit with that. I don't know if you all saw the meeting, or I didn't share my comments, but I did offer the school district ways that we could collaborate or work with them in matters such as these or any other matters. So the good news is that they did strike the line that spoke to social movements in that policy. so that, took care of a lot of the problems with the policy. But the offer still stands for them. And I did speak with President Boussard after the meeting, and she is interested in some education time that could be spent with the board, with us and the board, in sort of workshop or informational sessions that we'd be able to look at things and have conversations about things that they may have encountered and things that may, catch our eye, or what are some growing places for growth that the board could look at as a district even. So I think that's an opportunity for us to even be able to engage them. And then not to jump ahead, Raf, to that action plan, but if we're looking at different topics that we'll be looking at, if education is one of them, then already having this relationship will allow us to maybe access some data and at least some conversations around some of the problems that they may or may not have had as a school district. So overall, I think it was a success. I think we, overall achieved what we set out to achieve, and then, help to start, that relationship with the school district so that we can work with them moving forward. Doreen, do you have anything that you would like to maybe add to that?
No, I just appreciate, you speaking up, and I think we worked well together as a team, and I think it really made them think. I talked to Mr. Copeland, who's on the school board, at Juneteenth, and he is also very interested in working with our commission. So I just think there are so many opportunities there because there are issues to address with the school system. So I definitely would like to see, that on our, larger agenda, if you will.
Great, thank you. Emily, I'll kick it over to you. Does anyone have any questions about that school board issue meeting, or any questions about League of Women Voters meeting? Great, thank you. Emily, we'll kick it over to you for the prioritization exercise. 10 points to me for saying that. Prioritization.
This really connects to what Doreen was just saying. So what's our big agenda while we exist together and as the Truth and Reconciliation Commission? And it strikes me that we have kind of two moving parts. One is creating space for truth telling and reconciliation. And I see that some folks have gotten into that shared document of ours and have put some really great things into the draft action plan around truth telling and getting to know people's stories. But the other thing we need to do is examine policies and practices. And that's a big thing. And so far we have been kind of reactive, which is good. I think we should be prepared to respond to things that happen in the community. But we also need to be proactive and come up with a way to identify the different things that we're going to be examining. You feel me? We can't just be like, oh, something happened in the school board, so let's turn our attention to that. We need to come up with kind of a list of the things that we want to examine in our months together and prioritize those things or assign those things. And so what I wanted to talk about was your interest in, your willingness to participate in a prioritization exercise whereby we will identify all of those things, those big topical areas, and we will work as a group to figure out which ones are most important to us. So maybe the public school system, maybe it's the police, different big areas. And then I think in our action plan, we should set up check-in points where we figure out what are we hearing from the public, and is that one of the things that we're examining, and kind of retool and readjust as we're going on. So that's the idea. I've done this kind of thing before with groups I've been a part of. In person, I do a colored dots exercise where I get one of those like sticker books, and it's like, okay, everybody write down what you're interested in. And then maybe the pink dot means this is my highest priority, and a blue dot means this is my second highest priority. But we don't have the ability to do that right now. So I wanted to see what you thought about doing something like that. See if you think that's something we could maybe accomplish tonight, or is that something that you think we will need more time for? So I will mute myself for a minute and just, if you don't mind chiming in about what you think about that exercise generally.
I think it's sorry, Ra. This is jumping in. I think it's a great idea. In my personal opinion, I think we could at least get a few out there tonight. It may not be a complete list, but it certainly is a start.
Just what I was going to say.
Okay, don't want to put other people on the spot. Kendall, Raz, Tristan, what do you think?
I agree. Same page.
Works for me.
Yeah, me too.
Okay, well, actually, do I have the ability to do a poll? No, I'm not the host. I was going to say we could do some kind of polling exercise, but can we go ahead and start with the school district is an area of interest. And given the presentation at the League of Women Voters, law enforcement is an interest. So those are two areas. Would anybody, I'll type those in the chat so we can keep track of them. And then if the rest of you wouldn't mind sharing other things you think we should look at.
Emily, there's a, in the working doc, there was a list that was started about topics. And of course, okay, so education, housing, finance, criminal justice were the four yeah.
Okay, so we've got in the chat 3 of those 4. We've got education, law enforcement, housing, socioeconomic. Now, here's something that's a little bit socioeconomic status. That's tied up with housing and educational attainment. Do we want to tackle a big thing, or would we like to break that into smaller things? Doreen, you've got a hand up.
I forgot to take it down. Sorry. I had just actually added it into the chat. So we're good.
Okay, in line with that kind of thinking, we've got a big thing, let's break it down. So juveniles and adults, okay?
Mm-hmm.
So Kendall has in the chat local business engagement with diverse communities.
Oh, sorry, I meant to send that to everyone. Looks like
That's all right.
Kendall, can I ask you to say more about what you mean by that?
The types of experiences that individuals have when they're engaging with the businesses in Carlisle, and how those businesses are reacting, responding to members of the BIPOC community. I mean, I have examples, personal examples. I've heard of different examples that have been problematic for individuals. So I think it's something worth exploring.
Agreed.
Could we put that under the umbrella of business development? Or business and
Tawana, when you say business development, are you thinking about increasing awareness around like BIPOC-owned businesses?
Yeah, I was trying to stay in Kendall's lane a little bit, and I don't know if that's kind of what I picked up from it. I don't know if that was what he intended.
Well, I think the BIPOC-owned businesses are different. Their experiences will be different than the community members who are engaging with business owners that are not necessarily BIPOC-owned.
Mhm.
Sounds like we've
So
got.
maybe,
Oh, no, please go ahead,
go
Talani.
ahead.
I was going to say we have a lot going on under socioeconomic status, because when we talk about things like supporting BIPOC-owned businesses and incubation for that sort of thing, we might be talking about recommending to the council a TIF district or something like that, or some kind of program that would be supporting businesses. That's a really different thing than raising awareness around the racism that the patrons of businesses experience when they go to a shop. So I think we should distinctify those in our thought and
Sure.
make sure we don't lose track of those two things.
I think they're both relevant, and I misunderstood what Kendall was saying. So yeah, that makes sense. And Raz, I saw what you put in the chat. I think that's really good too. As an aside, or do you want to say something about that?
I was actually going to add something else. Go ahead, Twanda. I'll go after.
Well, just as an aside, I don't know. Every once in a while, I'll throw something like, hey, I don't know if you guys knew this, but this is something that Carlisle has. So Carlisle has 2 ministerial councils. It has a white ministerium, but they're just a regular ministerium. And then there's a black ministerium, and they're not able to meet at the same time because one of those groups does not want to compromise on the meeting time. So it's a well-known situation and issue. So I certainly think, and Dr. King even said that, 11 o'clock on Sunday morning is the most segregated hour. And I think that there's more to that segregation, and it's worth opening up and at least acknowledging and having some conversation about. Raz, you wanted to add something else?
Wondering if this fits under socioeconomic status, but I'm actually playing off of the action plan, but nonprofits, like organizations like Project Share or Community Cares, to understand like demographics better there.
I think one thing we have to look out for is distinctifying who are partners. So I think maybe we need another category to think about. So there's the facilitating conversations between people. There's our list of partners, like the League of Women Voters, and I would add the organizations you just mentioned. And then there's the policy and practice things that we're going to be looking at. And I don't see Project Share as a subject in our examination, more of a partner in facilitating conversation. We should also talk about method. So once we identify the things we want to look at, do we want to divide it up by into partners or committees and have regular report outs, refine the language. So for instance, with socioeconomic status, there's a lot in there. We might want to come up with a tagline that better expresses what we want to say. But could we set up a system where we have a couple of people looking at that issue, and every meeting we get a report out? Or would we rather sort of all of us work on fewer things? What are people's thoughts on that?
If I may, Emily, I like the idea of, and I kind of mentioned this in the comment section on the action plan, but of having, I like the subcommittee, or at least just having somebody to own each thing. I've learned even professionally, like if everybody owns it, nobody owns it. It may be harder to track down that way. And perhaps that's something we could do offline. Sign up for things that intrigue us most.
I think it'll depend on how many priority areas we come up with. And then how that might fit into our subgroup, or how that might fit into our working group model.
Mhm.
Sorry, Doreen, I saw your hand up and I just kept talking.
No, you're fine. This is just, I'm actually backtracking a little bit because something popped into my mind regarding the local business engagement with diverse communities. Before school ended, you know, I was able to talk to they're actually not even students, but some kids who had talked about experiences working in some businesses in Carlisle in which people would come in and make comments about whether it's diverse staff, about mask wearing, and then start relating it to politics. And the staff was not necessarily equipped to handle that. So I think when we're talking about not just business engagement with, you know, with diverse communities, I think in my mind, if we could add to that how to handle those situations, and that might already be embedded in there, but you know, in the situations in which I am speaking of, there just was no, for lack of a better term, manual. You know, not that there ever is one, but there wasn't a clear idea of how to problem solve in that situation, especially in a business setting, if that's making sense.
That makes a lot of sense to me, and it reminds me of something that we need to keep in mind as we take this list, which is eyes on the prize. What we need to do is produce a report where we share everything that we found and we make recommendations. And there are some things about which we can't make recommendations. So the religious institutions in town, we can't make recommendations to the borough about how they should operate. So maybe we should put them in the category of people we have a goal of facilitating a conversation between. But when we talk about something like socioeconomic status, we can make recommendations about that. We can recommend TIF districts. We can recommend visibility around redlining. There are things that the borough council can do. Also, sadly, with the school district, I think we need to be honest with ourselves about how much we can do in terms of policy recommendation. We can facilitate conversations, but we can't recommend that the borough do anything because the borough doesn't have any authority over the school district.
I agree with you generally, although I would say I think the borough has influential power, if not direct power. There may be certain rules, regulations, there may be certain tax breaks, there may be certain things that the borough does have authority over that we may or may not even know about, that they could use as leverage to gain compliance on some initiatives that the borough has related to truth and reconciliation. So I don't know, do we take it off the table? I agree with you wholeheartedly that when we're talking about religious institutions, that is probably not something they're going to be able to effectively navigate. But public institutions, absolutely. And even certain businesses that might be getting certain tax advantages for being in certain districts and areas, sure, they may have some influential power there too.
I like what you're saying, Kendall, and I think it makes me want to crack open another conversation just about private organizations and private clubs in the borough. I think that can feed white supremacy in ways that are insidious and quite harmful. But I'm not sure what that would look like from this commission. What does that look like? So are there ways that I don't know. It's just I think worth having on the table. I'm not sure really what to do with it.
I think these things are totally worth having on the table. I'm just saying we need to attend to what are we doing that's truth telling and what are we doing that's recommending stuff to the Borough Council. So absolutely, I think we should call attention to that form of white supremacy. We just need to keep in our own minds straight what we have the power to influence and do.
I think too, one of the ways that we can, right, so that the borough does have influence, is that, part of our recommendations might look like, requesting that the borough make a statement on something, or requesting that, which might not carry a lot, but at least it's them choosing the side of anti-racism, instead of being complicit or turning a blind eye to things that the commission has seen and recognized and is reporting back as completely harmful and detrimental to the borough's residents.
Raz.
Just as a thought for this exercise, Emily, you mentioned earlier, it seems like we're already getting into some potential buckets, what may be partners versus what may be recipients. I don't remember the exact language you used, but I wonder if even we, for the sake of the exercise, build in a couple of those different buckets, and even prioritize within.
I love prioritization within prioritization. Now you're speaking my language. Yes, I totally think we can do that. And I think it's a good idea while you're doing that to identify partner organizations that might work with you on that stuff. I do want to check in on the time. It's 6:32. Do we want, I can regroup this and create a second round of this, or we can keep going for, we could say another 5 minutes on this. What do y'all think?
Let's give it 5 more minutes.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say.
Raf, I think you wanted.
Yeah, I was gonna say, actually make a more general comment about the timing of tonight. I was just, we initially said like, maybe we can finish everything in an hour. And I was noting both that like our last meetings have both been about 2 hours. And so I thought that maybe an hour is quite ambitious given the other things on our agenda. And so maybe we should set 7:30 as the time, but that was the general thought.
Agreed.
Is that an issue for anyone?
I was just trying to be on like the Autobahn. I was like, my foot was just on the gas.
And actually, I took from your comment, Tawanda, that although it was, and perhaps I misunderstood, but even if we set 7:30, doesn't mean we may not end early,
Right.
such as 7 o'clock. So if we
Right.
end early, there's no
Yeah.
harm in that. People like to get time back. They
Right.
don't necessarily like when you take time from them.
Sure. Absolutely. Thank you.
Emily, do you have a Google Docs that you could maybe, if you can get screen sharing access, so maybe we can create the list? I'm just more visual when it comes to things like these.
Yeah, let me work on that.
Okay.
Hold on a sec here.
Emily, is there any harm, just for the sake of time, if you want to work on pulling that together, would it be okay if we had some conversation around the bylaws while you're pulling that together? Would that be okay, or would you just want to hang on a sec?
That is absolutely okay with me. One more thing, I don't know, I hit you all kind of late with this email. Tawanda and I thought it might be a good idea to have meeting packets in a Google Drive folder, so that you have the latest and greatest information from all your commission mates. And in that folder, I put the most up-to-date version of the bylaws that Kendall has for us, just so everyone wouldn't have to kind of crawl through their email and try to find it. You still have to find the email from me, but it's there. And no, I don't mind at all if you go ahead with the bylaw conversation while I'm putting this together.
Great, thank you. Kendall, does that throw your timing off? I apologize. We
No.
skip to that.
No, not at all. It's perfectly fine. Well, This shouldn't be an elongated conversation. You all have had multiple opportunities to see many different drafts and variations of it. As you all know, we took the skeleton of the Human Relations Commission bylaws, which I truly appreciate the borough for sharing that. And we used that again as a template and edited those things that didn't necessarily make sense for us, made a few tweaks and changes. So it spoke more to what our mission is, especially for a commission that has currently a finite end date. So are there any questions about the bylaws as they currently stand, or any concerns that we need to address?
I'll make a comment. Kendall, you've done a fantastic job with these. And I think with all of our inputs and changes and edits, you've really captured the essence of where we've been over the past month. And I'm grateful for all of your work in this. This looks really good. I even, I think Section 5 under Article 5, under composition, having, both subcommittees and working groups, that we have the option. Like if we need to do it this way, we can do it this way. I think that's, really a good look. It also dawned on me that two things, I'm going to actually double speak. One thing, we don't necessarily have to present the bylaws, action plan, and mission statement together, that we could submit the bylaws, ahead of everything else if we felt like they were ready. And then I'll retract that and say, maybe we want to make sure once we've gone through the mission statement and action plan that there isn't anything in there in either of those that contradict the bylaws. So maybe we want to hold off on the bylaws, on passing them among this group until we're completed with the action plan. So talked in a whole circle for you guys. Any thoughts on that or any other comments on the bylaws?
I guess from my vantage point, I think it would be unlikely that the action plan and the mission statement would conflict, because the bylaws, the way it's written, is general enough that it should capture, the essence. I think, I like that word that you use, the essence of what we're going to be doing with the action plan and the mission statement. The only thing that's really, I think, specific in here is the language that was pulled from the purpose and function, Article 2, which was pulled directly out of the resolution that created the commission. So as long as we're staying true to the resolution, which we should be, I really don't foresee any problems.
It sounds like you want these adopted and out of editing format. Yeah, Raph.
I have two quick thoughts. One about the issue we're talking about, and one about a small thing in the bylaws themselves. I pretty much agree with Kendall that I don't really see what would change. That we would need to change them with doing different things in our mission statement or action plan. It's just hard for me to identify any article that would need to change. Second thing is just a really small comment that occurred to me when I was just glancing through it again. I was wondering when we define indigenous, I was wondering why not just say the Americas as opposed to North America.
Can you give me context, Ralph, as far as article number and
good.
Are you under definitions or?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'm under definitions, indigenous, and I was just thinking native to the Americas.
Technically you're correct. I believe I just put North America solely because the part of America that we're in is North America. So I was being perhaps too specific there, but I mean, I think that I have no problem with that change. So I mean, you know, if we hold on this, I mean, there may be some other edits that you all see as well, and there's certainly no harm in holding on it. If we do move forward, to me, that's a friendly edit. That's not, that's something that could just be easily crossed off in a matter of a second.
I think for the purposes of this group, because those people who are indigenous to South American countries would not be native to this country. They would be native to another country. So I think for the purposes of because we don't have a necessarily strong immigration lens, which I think is where those who are native to the South American continent would fall under the scope of the work.
So if I
Sure.
might respond just quickly, my thinking is like, so I don't know exactly all that we think that we're going to deal with respect to Indigenous persons, but I'm thinking like people who were, say, Indigenous and, say, mixed with Black. Some of these people were imported to the United States after the slave trade was officially not allowed anymore. And so who are the Indigenous people that end up here, end up being from like lots of different places. And so I'm thinking if we're just concerned about the plight of Indigenous persons and their story in parts of America, like those people are kind of drawn from a lot of different places. That was the kind of general thought, that like we don't quite know that they're all from, say, the US, Canada, and Mexico. Maybe they're from additional places who end up here for one reason or other, who are genuinely still Indigenous peoples.
So when this was initially drafted, the term was really focusing on the Native American population, and especially knowing that we were going to have, I would imagine, some pretty substantive conversations related to the Carlisle Indian School and things of that nature and its impact on Carlisle more specifically. So that was really the intent. Although I do think that, you know, there are other populations that would have also predated the formation of the United States that would not necessarily fall under that category. So I don't know if we want to either broaden that definition or consider them more generally under the BIPOC definition, because they certainly would fall under that as well, or give them a whole nother definition category. I don't know. I bend to the will of the majority.
I'm with you, Kendall. I feel like we, you know, part of the reason why, so like the spirit of the Indigenous conversation is that we are super sensitive to the Carlisle Indian School and wanting to make sure that our work encompasses them and any land acknowledgement work that would need to happen. And I too bend to the majority. Raph, is it a sticking point? Is it something that you want to make an amendment to the?
This is not a strong sticking point. Yeah, this is not a strong sticking point. I guess, well, maybe one way to put it is, maybe one way to put the concern is maybe something like this. If we're gonna pull out, like, why not just call everyone people of color? and then we have covered all of them. And then if we're going to pull out like Indigenous people and Black people, I'm just thinking the harm done to Indigenous persons like spans across the 2 continents. But as I said, this is not a huge thing one way or the other.
So, and perhaps this tells me that we may want to not vote on the bylaws today to give people enough time to, because I know there are several people who have been silent during this, and maybe they're in deep contemplation about the terminology. So I think giving people extra time, we have time. So there's no harm in holding on this to give additional dialogue about this or other aspects of the bylaws.
That sounds good. Any other comments on the bylaws? Sorry, Kendall, couldn't
We tried.
check that box for you.
Can we agree to have it up for a vote at our next meeting?
Sure. Emily, are you ready to go back to the prioritization exercise?
I think I am. So
All right.
I shared with everyone a Google Doc labeled prioritization exercise. I think most people's Gmail account came up for me because I'm using Google. And I'm going to try to share my screen here too. Oh, yep, I see people coming in. Great. Well, you tell me what would be better. Would you rather me share my screen, or would you rather access the Google Doc yourself?
Did you send it via email? Because nothing popped up for me.
I did. Let me see if
Let
I
me
can.
refresh.
Yeah.
Yeah, I see it.
Oh, there it is.
Maybe it'd be easiest in case anyone else is following the meeting to just share your screen server so
Sure.
those who are attendees can see.
Sure. Bear with me. Sorry, it's been a while since I shared my screen. The semester's over.
So while you're doing that, Emily, I just wanted to make a statement that's that I found interesting. I want to say I was watching the Sunday morning program. Not 100% sure if that was the program or not, but Chambersburg, PA, more specifically Franklin County, PA, they have a racial reconciliation commission as well, and they were featured on the news program. And they have a Facebook page. They do different things. And I'm just bringing that up because I found that to be really, really interesting, and it's in close proximity, So I just thought, wow, here we have in close proximity someone who is going through the process. And it just might be advantageous, for us to, I don't know, reach out and talk. Just a thought.
I think that's a great idea.
Is my screen shared now?
It is.
Okay, great.
Thanks, Sean.
Okay. So the screen is sharing now. I thought let's just do a table for now, but I'm not attached to a table. So commissioners assigned is kind of a strong word. You could just type your name in there to signal your interest. Community partners are people, I think, either who need to be a part of the conversation or could help us facilitate the conversation. So is it okay if we keep that as one box, or do you think we need to divide it into kind of partners and maybe some systems and institutions that we're trying to change or keep them all together. And then I tried to model what I was talking about at the beginning of this exercise in the last column, type of action. What are we trying to do here? Just tell the truth. I shouldn't say just. Tell the truth about something that's going on. Are we trying to facilitate a dialogue between community members who've had difficulty talking about something? Or are we trying to make a policy recommendation? Or are we doing all three? I think it would just be really helpful for us at the end when we're all getting our report together to kind of use that tripart distinction to label what we're doing. And yeah, that's what I came up with for a visualization here. And I am going to stop talking now and let other people talk.
I'm just wondering, Emma, this is a great table. Is a fourth type of action, is there something around like data analysis, or that might not be the right word, but
that might be truth telling, Raz. That might be part of the, that might be too broad a thinking about truth telling. But I would consider setting up situations where we're having people share their experiences, but also collecting data, a form of truth telling.
okay, yeah,
I
absolutely.
could be persuaded.
No, I think it's fine, especially for now, and we can get more granular as we need to.
Socioeconomic state of the community is getting pretty big there.
I have a question. Raz had mentioned like Project Share, I think employment skills, or maybe he didn't say employment skills, but like conversations with community partners. Where would that fall under the table?
I think that was what I was trying to ask a couple minutes ago is there are people, how to put this tactfully, there are people who need to hear from us and there are people who will help us in reaching those people. Is that kind of what you're getting at, Tawanda? Like there are, the business that we keep finding out is giving BIPOC members of our community a hard time needs to hear from us. That's different than Project Share, who doesn't need to hear from us, I think. I'm still new to the community. They are more of a partner in helping to facilitate things. Does that make any sense?
It does. Part of so the extension of that question then is, or maybe not even an extension of that question, but the other thing is, so let's look at law enforcement, community partner being the Carlisle PD. It might be truth-telling, dialogue facilitation, and policy recommendation that happens there. But I think the Cumberland County Courthouse is a really good place to get data from, or the DA's office, or right, the clerk's office, or somebody that, right? So that's, to me, truth-telling, or to Raz's point, that's where some of the data would come from. So I think that's community partner / data point.
Would you all mind putting behind community partners when there is a question like that? Could you put a parenthesis behind that and say like data? So who's little, yeah, I see you there, exactly. Just to remind us, here's what we're engaging this group for.
Sure.
Is that going to be clear enough for all of us to do it that way, or should we add another? Okay.
To that end, I'm just making sure I'm understanding. Would something like a Project Share or Community Cares be under that data umbrella?
Can you ask that question again? I'm sorry.
Something like a project share. I'm thinking of like nonprofit organizations. Would they fall under that data umbrella, in your opinion?
I think they could. So I think they could. I think almost everyone that we have some sort of dialogue with, there is a component of data that should come from that conversation before we have that dialogue with them. So part of what made the town hall so impactful was people were seeing numbers where before it was just thoughts and conversation. Like, oh, this nonprofit says that they do really good work. They're not serving any Black children, right? And maybe people are saying, maybe that's just kind of the word on the street, but they want to have a conversation with us. And when we look at their data, we see that they're in fact not having any services given to children of color. So why is that? What are some ways that they maybe need to break down their own implicit bias or their own institutional racism so that they can service the community like they say they are? So there might be some, data that comes before the dialogue that should, I think, that's just my opinion.
I think we should also consider partners maybe outside of our community. So as I was following the All-American City coverage, Evanston was another city, and they're doing some interesting things around reparations in their community. Some would object that it's not really reparations, but nevertheless, they're doing things that are not typical. We might look to other communities and see what they're doing in terms of correcting socioeconomic harms, in terms of law enforcement.
Just for clarification, is education groups that we're targeting or stuff we want to talk about? Because it's the school district, then it's the Carlisle Indian Industrial School, and then it's Dickinson. And I don't know like which that's targeting.
If I can make a suggestion, we might need to flesh out the topics before we identify the community partners. So the reason that I say that is
So are you saying, like, for example, with the Carlisle Indian School, Industrial Indian School, that for that, there's a lot that we still have to do with the education part. Whereas CISD or Dickinson College, there's more studying, looking at trends, looking at concerns. Is that where you're going with that? Different issues for each one.
Yeah, I think, and maybe this is where I think maybe for the topic, right? Not maybe underneath the topic, maybe it's another column, so maybe we should go landscape with it. Okay, law enforcement. And then, okay, so what about law enforcement? Disproportionate arrest, disproportionate minority contact. Is it sentencing? Is it fines? Is it record expungement? Is it, rate of arrest? Like, what is it about that topic?
Okay.
Is it longer lasting? Is it, time of spent in the criminal justice system? What is the thing, right? So we know the system is broken, but what is it about that system that we're after? And then once we discover that, then who are our community partners, either to give us data, to facilitate dialogue, to give us more information about the issue, who helps us? Because I think what's happening is, like, we see the topic and then we're all identifying community partners based on what that topic means to our understanding of truth and reconciliation individually.
I think there's going to be some back and forth and adjusting on both sides. But Tawanda, can I ask, would you say that the way we've broken down socioeconomic state of the community most closely resembles what you're thinking we should do in terms of analyzing those topics into sharper points? Because I see what Tristan's saying now, that when you look under education, we've listed a bunch of institutions. When you look under socioeconomic state of the community, we've listed something different.
Right. So I would just say, like, is it so housing? Is it fair housing? Is it affordable housing? Is it access to housing? Is it rates of homelessness in the borough? Who's experiencing homelessness? Because if we say housing, right, so then is it the housing authority or is it CARES? Both of those organizations deal with housing, but in very different ways.
Can I just make a suggestion real quick? I wonder if this is an opportunity for the commissioners assigned for for working groups or something for each of these four to come out with a little more backdrop for each, or maybe just to answer these questions in smaller groups and bring it to the next meeting per se.
And to then better help us identify the community partners?
What I'm thinking, it could be all across the board. It could be, here's the macro topic. Within your, within this subgroup, identify, who those community partners would be, what those action steps could be. And of course, we could comment on each other's and so forth.
I think we are reaching a point where we're not going to get any farther tonight with this exercise. And if we actually, Raph, did I just cut you off? I'm having trouble seeing because my thing is small now. This is where, if we were doing this in person, I would have had us in breakout groups, further refining what we're doing in each of these, and then reporting back to the group, and then norming around what each group came back with. So sometimes we would find that the law enforcement folks are doing something really similar to the education folks, sometimes not. And then when the groups come back and report out, we kind of norm them back together and try to make us all do a similar thing. So before I ask again the question, are we ready to shelve this for the night? Maybe something that could make our life a little bit easier. I'm not seeing folks sign up for social and cultural institutions. Do we think that maybe that's because that we don't have enough bandwidth to take that on too, and that we'll kind of naturally be taken care of with the other stuff? Or do we want to try to keep that as a focus area? So do we want to narrow our focus area to these three big things? Or do we want to try to do the four things? And is that a question we can answer tonight?
Emily, just to speak for myself, I didn't sign up for anything in particular just because I just didn't yet. I'm sorry. So
didn't
I'm
mean-
willing. I'm willing to sign up for that one just to keep it alive because, like I said, I think it's kind of something that could stay on the table for now.
We could
Wanda, I'd
also,
love to.
sorry.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was going to say we could also combine it with socioeconomic state of the community, only because like I work at a cultural institution and membership is a big part. And generally the question is, can people in lower economic classes afford a membership? Is that a gatekeeping kind of thing? So I think like I can see that fitting. It wouldn't be like housing and finances per se, but that we think about that at a cultural institution. And even a social club is also kind of, do you have money for a membership or every time you go in, things like that. So I think we could even just integrate that into a third if we just wanted to keep 3 rather than break it on itself. And then if it's only a little bit, we don't have to worry about not having enough.
I think we should keep it separate for now, only because I think 2 things. I think the socioeconomic state of the community is already needy enough. And 2, there's going to be some, in addition to the things that you mentioned, Tristan, there are going to be some really specific harmful policies and application things that I think are going to come out of there.
Yes, and to Emily's point, we can always converge some of these later on.
Sure.
And something to think about in terms of assigning is, as we get ready to have some conversations, I do want to be sensitive to the fact that those conversations are different experienced by a white woman than by others on the commission. So if there are times that a conversation needs to happen for whom some of us might be more comfortable or less in danger, I think we should also think about that.
Emily, this is great work. This is really, this really puts some, concretizes a lot of the scope and conversation that we've been having. So I think this is a great start. And I think we do really well with Google Docs. So yeah, this is great.
Thank you, teachers. We're all about tables. I feel like we've kind of made as much progress as we can make tonight on this. Is that feeling right?
Yeah.
Okay. I can't see the agenda right now. Would one of you kindly remind me who's taking the reins from here?
That would be you, my dear.
Oh, okay. Yeah, we're to mission statement. Oh, okay.
Yes.
All right. I'm going to stop sharing my screen if that's okay.
Sure. There
we go. Okay. Mission statement. So we were all working in this big Google Doc. And I suggested maybe we should streamline this mission statement. So sometimes, when we're ideating, we engage in exercises like talking about our values that just kind of help solidify us as a group and inform the mission statement. But at the end of the day, I do think simpler is better. And so in the meeting packet, I included a sort of short version of the mission statement. And we're not taking a vote tonight, but like the bylaws, I would like to get close to taking a vote on it next time, just so that we can, obviously we have a lot to do with our action plan and actually carrying out the actions in it. I'm going to copy and paste it and put it in the chat so the panelists, so the attendees can also see it. Yeah, okay. So with that said, yep, not taking a vote tonight, but hoping to take a vote next time. Reactions to this more streamlined version of the mission statement.
This is really great work, Emily. My only comment, and I put this comment in the other document, in the one that has the action plan attached to it. I know we like meeting our community where it is. Like, I know we like the spirit of that, but I'm wondering if it's too colloquial for a mission statement.
I'm all about making things more informal and more colloquial. Myself, just my personal mission is to demystify my discipline, which is a big word, discipline. But I'm not going to die on this hill if others think that it sounds too informal. That's fine.
I do like what it says, though. Yeah, Raph.
Yeah, I wondered to myself, because I remember reading the comment, and I was wondering to myself, like, what's the formal version of meeting people where they are? And I was thinking, like, it was actually really hard for me to think about what that would look like, what the non-colloquial version of that is. And if to relate to Emily's point, if trying to find that is going to be like a little bit confusing and not transparent to the people we serve.
I'm fine with the language meeting our community where it is and engage in getting truth telling and reconciliation. I guess I wonder, should there be a tad bit more to that statement in order to engage them in truth telling and reconciliation, in order to elevate their thinking, or in order to bring more cohesiveness to the community, or to, I don't know, I feel like there's perhaps something aspirational that could wrap up that sentence. I don't know exactly what that is, but that's my initial reaction.
I had a professor in college that would always, like, every time you would give an answer to something, she would say, "To what end? To what end?" Yeah, Raph.
Isn't the end the beginning of the phrase?
I guess it is. I guess if you read it that way, yeah. That's right.
And a reminder to everyone, I keep forgetting this. This is going to go through a round of feedback beyond us, which is another reason I thought more streamlined is better, because the more content we give the broader group, the more opportunity for disagreement.
I think this might be sort of like how our bylaws are, like they're pretty much done. And maybe we agree to vote on it next time.
Works for me.
Which is still ahead of schedule. Any other thoughts on the mission statement? Emily, do you have anything else to add on that?
No, I do not. I'm happy to hand it over to Raph for the action plan report.
Well, if there isn't anything else, I'll start talking about the action plan. So the action plan, in contrast to the mission statement and the bylaws, has like a lot more fun things to think about and settle. And I actually even think that our prioritization exercise today maybe shows that we still have like so much left to talk about and think through. So everyone has the Google Doc that has the all the thoughts that we had, and maybe the best way to proceed is maybe in talking through the structure that we have so far, because there are a bunch of questions and comments that were made, and maybe the best thing to do in our remaining 15 or so minutes is to maybe like see if we can get some consensus around those questions. This is an idea. So one thing that, oh, Tawanda, were you gonna jump in and say
Yeah,
something?
which questions were you referring to? The ones that are at the end of the ones at the end of the action plan? And the reason that I'm asking that is we don't necessarily have 15 minutes because we still have some other items on the agenda that we would need to go over.
Right.
If I can maybe make a suggestion, given the work that we've done around the prioritization exercise, is there a way that enters into the action plan? Maybe not specifically, maybe we don't specifically say, analyze criminal justice from the perspective of the Carlisle Police Department, facilitate dialogue, but maybe it's, we do these things in broad and general terms, in these, in broad and general terms, and then we can be more specific internally.
So as a general matter, I propose that like the first meeting that we should just kind of have these pretty vague, more or less following what the resolution suggested. And I think the pushback was that that's not so guiding because it doesn't have like dates or anything like that in it. And maybe we wanted to like think more together about more specific things. So I don't know. Maybe the answer is we don't have time to explore this as deeply as we want to. Tristan?
Yeah, I do just want to bring one thing up, and this could be action plan or generally speaking. And it was kind of I write a lot to say a little bit, I think. My one concern was what groups are we focusing on? And that's a conversation I have at work every day. So like we had said, the African-American community, the Indigenous community, but there's a very, 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 very small portion of Carlisle that is Indigenous now. So we would be talking about 1918. So we would have the history of it, but we couldn't talk about that community. And then you had said like the Asian population, it's larger in Cumberland County broadly, but in Carlisle it's very small. So then are you thinking of immigrant communities where it's, are we also thinking, Bosnians, Greeks, Muslims, all of that? And this might be related as we figure out our ideas we want to focus on, thinking about the groups. So do we define the groups, or do we say we are looking at policing in Carlisle? Who is going to come forward and talk to us, rather than saying, these are the communities that matter, please step forward. That was one thing. That was all of my comments on it. And I think just broadly speaking, because we've been bringing up the school quite a bit, and we house the record. We know it matters. We will say every single day it matters, but in this context, how does that really matter? So just thinking broadly about these groups also, because that's where I've been like, well, who are we focusing on and what time period? So just to be aware of that. And for myself too, I have to figure out where we're looking. That's my broad blanket comment from what I made on there. And maybe that is something like we do keep more general until we figure out where we're going and who wants to tell the stories too. So we can't really force some communities. Just broadly, that's where my head has been through a lot of these conversations.
Yeah, I some of my questions as well, Tristan, were about that. Like, do we want to focus on groups versus focus on topics? And Tawanda's approach about kind of almost like combining the prioritization exercise with the action plan would be kind of moving in the direction of topics as opposed to groups, it sounds like. And I feel like that's just like something that we should at least talk about, probably. Like, is that the direction? Since people did put that we should focus on the groups. And so maybe this is just something that we need to discuss more. I mean, both via the document together, and then also like spending some time in our next meeting for that purpose as well.
I love the idea of workshopping this next meeting. This is a big thing. And I wonder, Raf, how you feel about taking on the responsibility of kind of setting up some big questions for the workshop based on the prioritization exercise today and what you have already, and kind of set us up to hammer out something more concrete the next time. Would that work, Tawanda? Do we have enough time next time to kind of?
Are you, when you say next time, are you like thinking of July 6th? Or were you thinking of in between now and July 6th?
I wasn't thinking. I could go for either. Like we could do like a workshop meeting that isn't a public meeting, right? We have the ability to do that. And
Right.
then we could, as long as we're not making decisions, and I don't think that getting clear on these questions is decisioning, just making decisions.
Yeah, I think where we're at with both the prioritization exercise and the action plan is like conference room with a whiteboard or some flip paper that we can, I think that's where we are. And these items aren't necessarily due until July 24th. If we can have a workshop, if we can have an informational working session between now and the 6th, that's probably ideal. But that's only 2 weeks, a week. That gives us a week to do that. I mean, we could probably look at, Raf's really good with pulling together the when to meet. But just generally speaking, what are we available between now and the 6th? Just generally speaking.
Generally, yes.
I guess one question is, what else do we have on our agenda for the 6th in the first place? And thinking about whether we should plan new meetings, are we already for the 6th?
At this time, no, there really isn't a lot on that agenda.
That's what I was actually wondering, is if we know we have a couple of voting items, at least, the bylaws and the mission statement. We could easily spend 30 or 45 minutes solely on this topic, unless other things hit the agenda that I guess we don't know about today. But I'm not opposed to a meeting in between then and now as well. I may or may not be there. My calendar is very hectic between now and then, but I guess it depends on the dates.
So some of this, like my stance is that I would probably prefer to do this in person, like where we can kind of write and move things around. And I'll actually be Zooming into the meeting on the 6th from Myrtle Beach. So I'll be in South Carolina at our next meeting. So I won't be able to be in person. But that, I mean, if it ends up being that we do it, in this format and we use Google Docs, I just won't, it'll be different for me. It'd be harder for me to.
Well, it's due on the 24th. Is that right? We could do a Zoom meeting on the 6th and see how far we get. And then if we feel like there are some things that we really need to hash out in person, we'll still have one meeting.
Sure. So then that's no informational, no in-person meeting between now and the 6th. Is that what?
I think that's what we're hearing. we might as well use that 6th meeting for this
Okay.
purpose.
Okay. That works for me. Anything else on the action plan?
I think we should also feel free to continue adding to the Google Doc, because I will, per Emily's suggestion, set up some questions to ask to kind of help guide the discussion. But you know, kind of getting feedback from people putting things in will be helpful as well as they do that.
Cool. Yeah, I think we do really good with the Google Docs. So I'm really pleased with the work and the conversation that goes on there. We're really, really good with that. Anything else on the action plan before we move on? Great. All right, so now we will open it up for comments from the public. Any comments that we have from panelists or attendees who would like to give comment at this time? All right, hearing none, we'll go ahead and proceed. Announcements and future meetings. Well, we talked about that already. So we'll be together via Zoom on July 6th. We have that meeting. Yeah, Raph.
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Did we actually ever approve the minutes?
Yeah.
We did this time.
Oh,
We did it this time. But thank you for that, because we might not have. So we already talked about our next meeting would be July 6th via Zoom. All of that will be set up. Before we adjourn, though, I just want to remind you that Doreen sent out a great template for the headshots and for headshots and bios, and we have a setup to be able to get that on the borough website. So, and then even having the ability to highlight one of us from time to time on the borough's Facebook page, your commissioner. So that's something that's in the works. So if you haven't completed that, do that as soon as you are able. And then also the Google Doc that has the our contact information. Yeah. Still waiting on Raph, Kendall, and Doreen. If you could take a look at that, and if your information on there is good, or if you want to make any changes, just green your line so that way that I know that it's good, and I can get this information over to Fred so that he has it to get in touch with us if he has any questions about anything that goes on in the meeting or wants to clarify something that was said. He'll be able to do that. And then it's good too for us if we want to start a Signal or any sort of texting app that might be, I got you, Kendall. All of yours is good. That might be helpful if we're able to shoot a quick text instead of emailing. So that's it. Any other announcements or any other concerns, questions, comments, considerations? Yes, ma'am.
I may be the only one who is nervous about this, but how do you all feel about sharing our bios before they go public? I just want to make sure I don't write like too much compared to other people. It's probably totally fine. Doreen's looking at all of them and hopefully would tell me if I was way out of line in terms of word count or something like that. But just wondering if anybody else had that feeling that they wanted to see what other people were doing.
I had the same thought, Emily. More specifically, hoping that people could like revise mine and make sure it's cool.
Yeah, now I'm looking at them and reading over them, and I have created a folder in which I'm keeping them. And I actually emailed the ladies today to see if they wanted them sent like in bulk or individually. So I'm gonna send them all at once. So what I can do is when I get all of them, I'll just send them to you guys first to take a look. And then once I get the, hey, it's okay, then I'll send it to the ladies.
Would it be helpful to use a Google folder, Doreen?
Sure. I'm just getting used to Google. I never used Google too much before. So I'm sure I will figure it out. And sure.
Just thinking that way you won't have to wait until you get all of them. We can all
Okay.
upload them as we get them, and then once they're all in there, then that makes your job easier.
Okay. Sounds good.
Thank you, and thank you for doing that. Any other questions, thoughts, considerations, concerns? Hearing none, it is 7:30, my friends, on the nose, and we are adjourned. Thank you all. Have a great night, and we'll see each other on the 6th, if not before. Take care.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank
Good night.